tell me some of the issues that has happened in the last week before we start our discussion. So each one of you tell me what exactly happened last week according to you. People online as well. Okay. Legal status for MSP, okay. Okay, farm laws, that was last week. Are you guys reading newspaper or not? No? Some more? Yes, some issues in news in the last week. NFHS, some more? S400 we discussed last week as well. Some more? 10% EWS. Yesterday Supreme Court judgment. What else? Okay, new variant. Murthy, Dasari, Prasanna. I need more responses. Okay. So this week's current affairs, we're going to talk about some of the 8 most important topics that were in news. First is, we'll start with 10% EWS reservation and the judgment of Supreme Court on NEET. Followed by, we're going to talk about medical termination of pregnancy, some highlights of the National Family Health Survey. Okay. The first topic of the day is 10% EWS and the Supreme Court judgment on it. We're going to touch base slightly on the reservation aspects. When you're learning about reservation, what you need to ensure is that reservation is a very huge concept. People who have done law, it takes a lot of time for them to understand what are the constitutional provisions for reservation and how intricately they are linked. Since you're learning for the first time or probably trying to understand the evolution of reservations, it is very important for you to learn few points on a daily basis. That is, after 1 or 2 years of preparations, you'll be able to understand what exactly is the whole life cycle of reservations. So today we'll be focusing more on EWS and OBC reservations. Alright? So what exactly happened is, all of you know 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act, which gave 10% reservation to economically weaker sections. Earlier it was socially and educationally backward classes. Recently, central government extended the reservation to all India quota of NEET. And the case was filed in Supreme Court saying, after writing the examination or just before writing the examination, how can you extend the reservation of 27% to OBC, 10% to EWS to all India quota of NEET. Supreme Court started reviewing the judgment, the petition filed, and later Supreme Court said that government has to file an affidavit on the rationale behind choosing the criteria of 8 lakhs for EWS. That is, for people who fall under the category of OBC creamy layer or economically weaker sections, the economic criteria, the top ceiling is 8 lakhs per annum. Supreme Court asked, what is your rationale behind 8 lakhs? That is, on what basis have you decided that 8 lakhs is a criteria? Government said it is going to file an affidavit. So if we understand the cycle of reservation system in India, all of you need to understand that post 1947, there were some special provisions which were created for people of SCs, STs, OBCs in 1980s. Can you tell me what is the full form of SC, ST and OBC? Scheduled class. Okay. This one? What about OBC? Other backward. Some are saying class, some are saying caste. What is it? Okay. What about EWS? Okay, good. So I am going to explain you the brief timeline of reservations. Before we understand that, I am going to talk about 3 constitutional articles, article number 14, article number 15, article number 16. Can you tell me what is it? What does article 14 talk? Okay, what is it exactly called? I cannot see your chart, people online. Are you guys typing? Okay, what is article 14? Article 14 is equality before law. Article 15 is prohibition of discrimination on the basis of religion, race, caste, place of birth and sex. Article 16 is what? Equality of opportunity in public employment. So we're going to talk about 15, which talks about educational institutions or reservation in educational system. Article 16, which is reservation in employment, which is public employment. All right, we are clear so far? Right to equality. Okay. First one is 1951. First Constitutional Amendment Act happened in 1951, where Article 15 Clause 4 is being added. So what is Article 15 Clause 4 and First Constitutional Amendment of 1951? Article 15 Clause 4 says that state shall provide special provisions for the upliftment of socially and educationally backward classes. So we are talking about social and educational backward classes. Okay, and SCs and STs. Are we clear so far? 15th First Constitutional Amendment Act, Article 15, Clause 4A, 1951. In 1979, Janata Party government led by Morarji Desai appointed BP Mandal Commission. Now, why did the government appointed BP Mandal Commission? Government noticed that there are some section of population who are socially and educationally backward, but they don't fall into the category of SC and ST. Is that right? So they given a task to BP Mandal, who was a politician from Bihar, saying you find out those section of people who are not under SC ST reservation and give us a list. So what BP Mandal Commission did, they gave a report in 1983 when Indira Gandhi was a Prime Minister. They did not consider the report in 1983. Then Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister. Rajiv Gandhi also did not consider the report. And then came who? Who was the Prime Minister of Rajiv Gandhi? There are two more people in between Rajiv Gandhi and PV Narasimha Rao. Who are they? Okay. Do you all know who are the Prime Ministers of India? So let's go a quick recap. First Prime Minister? Come on, first. Jawaharlal Nehru. Second? Okay. Third? Indira Gandhi. Fourth? Before Charan Singh? Indira Gandhi? Come on. People online, Indira Gandhi? After Charan Singh? Rajiv Gandhi. After Rajiv Gandhi? I just told you. VP Singh. Chandrasekhar. After Chandrasekhar? PV Narasimha Rao. 1996. Then Atal Bihari Vajpayee of 1996. No confidence motion in the parliament. There's a famous video in the YouTube that he submits his resignation to the President of India. 1996. He fails. Then comes H.D. Devegowda. I.K. Gujral. Then Atal Bihari Vajpayee forms the government. Correct? After that, Manmohan Singh and Narendra Modi. Are you guys clear? So, where were we? We were at considering the BP Mandal report. So finally, in 1990, VP Singh accepts the BP Mandal Commission report. There are some provisions mentioned in the BP Mandal Commission report. What BP Mandal Commission report says is that there are 52% of the population who are socially and educationally backward, and we recommend you to provide a reservation of 27%. And then VP Singh government takes a decision to provide 27% of reservation to other backward classes. Again, after PV Narasimha Rao coming into government, he takes a decision of extending that and adding 10% more reservation to economically poor people. (27% OBC plus 10% economically poor). What happens? In 1992, a public interest litigation is filed in Supreme Court by Indira Sahane and there comes the judgment of Indira Sahni versus Union of India, which is a famous judgment which has given two provisions, two major important provisions. First thing is the concept of creamy layer, and second thing is the concept of reservation cap of 50%. Now what Indira Sahni judgment says that you give 27% of reservation, we do not mind, but there should be some provision that there are some section of people who are well off when compared to others, who are socially and educationally well off when compared to others, so there needs to be a cap. Then the government through a resolution created a concept called creamy layer, where it gave an economical cap. Initially it was 2.5 and currently it is 8 lakhs per annum. In 2017 it was revised, before that it was 6 lakhs per annum. So OBC, creamy layer and non-creamy layer, the cap is 8 lakhs and it started in 1993. That is the basis of the cap of OBC reservation, and Supreme Court struck down the concept of 10% of reservation to economically poor. Why? Saying it is unconstitutional. Why? Because there is no constitutional backing for people who are economically poor. If you see Article 15 Clause 4, Article 16 Clause 4, both says that it is socially and educationally backward classes and not economically poor. That is the reason in 2019, when government introduced the 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act, Article 15 Clause 6, Article 16 Clause 6 were added to give provisions for economically weaker sections. So now we have a constitutionally backing for 10% of reservation. Do you all understand? What was the difference between 1992 reforms and reforms of 2019 is the constitutional provisions for economically weaker sections, and that is where our origin of 10% economically weaker sections has been started. And the government gave certain criteria for who belongs to these economically weaker sections. Can you tell me? EWS criteria? Okay. Second one? Thousand square yards. Okay. Less than 5 acres of agricultural land. Now, what exactly happened recently is when Supreme Court was trying to review the extension of reservation to all India quota, it asked the government, on what basis have you decided 8 lakhs? Right? Now we are connecting the dots. The government said it will file an affidavit. Now you guys tell me, should we increase the limit of 8 lakhs or should we decrease the limit of 8 lakhs, or what is the current stance? Why do you think government has done that? For example, let's say there are 100 people, out of which 8 lakhs per annum, almost 80 people are falling in the slab. Alright. Now, if the government reduces to 6 lakhs per annum, 90 people might fall into the category. Suppose the government increases it to 15 lakhs. What happens? Almost it reduces to 40%. Right? So there are good number of chances that those who deserve the most might fall into the EWS category. We never know. So the government is in two dilemmas right now. One is extension of the creamy layer concept for OBC. Recently there was a discussion in the parliament that we need to extend the 8 lakhs criteria for OBC. Again, Supreme Court said that not only economical criteria, you need to see about the other factors as well, and EWS. Alright? We are clear so far? Decrease. Praneeth says decrease. Why decrease? More number of people come to this plan. But what is the policy of the government? That we need to know. Usually what happens is OBC, if you take OBC an example, it started extending. It started from 2.5 lakhs, 4 lakhs, 6 lakhs, now 8 lakhs. So there is good possibility that it might exceed. Conditions should be stringent for EWS than OBC, right? What conditions? What conditions do you mean? There are a lot of conditions. It is not only economical, square yards, residential property, commercial property, agricultural income, parents working in government services, a lot of criteria. Yes, all of those will be definitely difficult, and in the coming days, even for OBC or EWS, it is going to increase. So that we trying to cater to the most needed people. Yeah. So we discussed about Article 14, 15, 16, talks about education, talks about employment. Then we talked about Article 46. So the basis is Article 46. What does Article 46 say? Article 46, it says promotion of educational and economic interests of scheduled tribes and scheduled tribes and other weaker sections. So it is the backing. So DPSP, these are fundamental rights. So under Article 15, Article 16, we show positive discrimination. And on the basis of Article 46, we try to make the policies. Okay, DPSPs are those which are ideals for the state to make. That state should keep in mind of the directive principles before making policies. We are clear? If you see, this is article number 15, 15 clause 4 we spoke earlier. This is article 16 clause 4. This is the 10% reservation EWS, especially corrected from the constitution, article 15.6, and this is article 16.6. The fundamental difference I am trying to again emphasize you guys is that article 15 says, 15 clause 4 says socially and educationally backward classes, and article 15 clause 6 says advancement of any economically weaker sections. Now you have a constitutional provision for article 15 clause 6 and 10% EWS reserve. This is added to first Constitutional Amendment Act. This was originally in the Constitution. This is 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act. Okay. Touch basing these points, I am going to cover. You answer this question. I am going to cover one more Constitutional Amendment Act. This is a previous year's question from 2020 prelims. Please read carefully. I got an answer from Praneeth as A. It's a previous year's question. It's not as easy as you think. Just spend some time. Kaumudi says D. Some more answers? D. Initially, what did you think? Okay, so that is the problem. See, in prelims what happens is you will be easily tempted to pick the option that he wants you to pick. He wants you to pick A, but the answer is D. The moment you spend time, understand what is given, you will get the answer. Protection against untouchability. If you see, what is article number 17? Okay, you know article 17 is untouchability. Right to equality is what articles? Article 14 to 18. That's it, that is the answer. So it involves two steps. It is not a direct answer. Every previous question, that from the last class I am trying to emphasize that there are a series of steps that you need to follow before answering the questions. There is almost 80 to 90 of 100 questions. You need to have at least one or two layers while answering the question. Constitutional amenities is what article? Okay. Exploitation 23-24. What does 23-24 talk about? Okay. Okay, good. So I'm going to talk about two more important aspects, that is 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act and 127th Constitutional Amendment Bill. 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act gave constitutional status to National Commissions for Backward Classes, NCBC, and 127 Constitutional Amendment Bill says that states can have their own list. Okay, during 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act there was not a special provision saying states can have their own list. So government introduced the 122nd Constitutional Amendment Bill, which empowers the states to have their own OBCs list. Correct? You have one central OBC list given by the president, backed by 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act, constitutional status, and then 127th Constitutional Amendment Bill says states can have their respect to OBCs list. We're clear so far? Basing on this, I have framed another question. Yes, try to answer this. It says matching, and it is a format of a previous year's question, but with the current topics, so that you guys can answer the question. Think, read properly, give me the exact mapping. Quick. 99? NJC, okay. $99 NJC, 101 is GST, 103 is 10%, NCBC. Good. We clear? DC, AP. Okay. Let me see. D, C, D. Okay. Moving on. We got our second issue is about AP capital issue. Some might think that it's a regional issue, but this is an article in the Hindu editorial. So it is not a regional issue, it's a national, it's not even a national issue, but it is expected for a civil services and aspirant to know about what is happening in a state, what are the problems of the capital, and if you are a bureaucrat, how are you going to solve such problems? Because acquiring 33,000 acres under land acquisition, it's not an easy task. If you are a bureaucrat, you will have the pain to understand that land acquisition is one of the most difficult tasks that you can ever do, because people's sentiment which is attached to the land is far beyond the compensation which can be provided by any government. So it is a very delicate issue. Right now we are going to take, it is very apolitical, we are going to understand what was the issue, what was the thought process behind the governments in taking such decisions, alright. So if you see, the government has recently repealed the act that was made in 2020, a decentralization act. I am going to talk about the overall timeline. What happened is, the state was bifurcated in 2014, am I correct? What is the basis? Article number 3 of the Constitution was the basis for bifurcation of the state. Then a AP Reorganization Act was created, of which Hyderabad was a joint capital. Then the new government was formed in 2014. The new government created Capital Regional Development Authority in 2017. What is this Capital Regional Development Authority? They have created CRDA to develop the new capital, acquire the land, and promote the development there. Okay. In 2020, the next government said Decentralization and Inclusive Development of All Regions Act. What it said, it repealed the Capital Regional Development Authority Act, and it said we are going to have 3 capitals. One is legislative capital, executive capital, and judicial capital. So this is the brief timeline of what exactly happened. Now if you tell me what is the exact issue with the capital. Here is Amravati. Here is Visakhapatnam. Correct? Now what the government said in 2014 is that we are going to have a greenfield development, we are going to make Amravati as the capital. They created Capital Region Development Authority. Now this Capital Region Development Authority signed an agreement with farmers. Now what does the agreement say? The agreement says for every acre of land you give, we are going to compensate you in multiple ways. What is the multiple ways? We are going to give you 1000 square yards of residential plot, 450 square yards of commercial plot, and a compensation of 50,000 per year with an increase of 5k for the next 10 years. So this was the provisions for which the farmers signed an agreement with the institution created by the state government called Capital Regional Development Authority, and this is called land pooling scheme. In mains, in paper 3, you can get a question saying, due to the changing nature of land acquisition, new schemes such as land pooling scheme has emerged. Please tell us the provisions of the land pooling scheme and is it beneficial or detrimental to the people. These are new methods. See, such kind of a scheme has never been observed, or if at all observed, such huge 33 acres of land has never been taken for the government. Now, the problem is, what is the issue? 2019, another government formed. It said Amaravati is not going to be the capital, it is only going to be the legislative capital. Executive capital will be Visakhapatnam and judicial capital will be Kurnool. It is their decision. Every decision of the government has both pros and cons. From the examination point of view, as a bureaucrat, to be a future bureaucrat, you need to understand that when such a decisions are being taken by the government, how is the people suffering? What are the different bases on which such decisions can be taken? Is there any constitutional backing for that? Alright? You're writing? In 2020, the government repealed and it said we want to decentralize. If you see the act, they want to decentralize and they want to promote inclusive development of what? Of all regions of the state. Okay? And so is why they have made 3 capitals. Now the state government again decided to repeal these acts, and the question is, should Amaravati be continued as a capital? Okay? That's it. There are pros and there are cons. If you look at it, there's a different, significant difference between a brownfield development and a greenfield development. Greenfield development says you build everything from scratch. You says you renovate or build upon existing infrastructure. For example, if you're trying to buy a new house, okay, buying the land first, constructing the house might cost you about 2 crores. For example, if you buy a house, an apartment which has already been constructed, and try to renovate the house with 50 lakhs, is there a significant difference? That is the difference between greenfield and brownfield development. The previous government thinks that building from scratch, because we do not have a capital like Hyderabad, is a good option, is a futuristic option. The current government thinks that instead of wasting so much of money, let's just work upon what we exactly we have and try to further improve the existing stands rather than building from scratch. That is the only difference, a political difference. Politically, there can be any more objectives. Alright? Okay, this is another question. I have linked the current concept to geography and mapping. Try to answer the question. Read carefully every bit. It says arrange the places from east to west. Okay. People online, you say D, someone says D. Quick, I have many more people online. I need answers. Praneeth, Murthy. We'll draw a small map and see. Okay. First is, where is Visakhapatnam? Visakhapatnam is here. Amaravati, slightly inside. Bhubaneswar is here. Bangalore is here. So answer is 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, the third topic of discussion is Project 75I. Can somebody tell me what is it? It's been in news a couple of days ago. So it is a project of Indian Navy under which they are planning to build 24 submarines, of which 18 are conventional, 6 are nuclear, Scorpene. 6 Scorpion class submarines are now being launched, out of which 5 are already into commission. Bila Bagher. Scorpion class with the help of France, developed by Mazagon Dock Lam Limited. It's a diesel plus electric propulsion system. So 3 to 4 points that you need to remember, that there are 6 Scorpion class submarines. How do you remember? K cube, V cube, 3 starts with K, 3 starts with V, in collaboration with France, developed indigenously by MDL, Mazagon Dockyard Limited. Okay? Are they nuclear? No. That's it. Shall we move forward? Scorpion class is a type of an engine. It's a class. For example, you have few engines for bikes. You have RE. It is a variety of an engine. That's it. It has no scientific backing. It is one type of an engine. So Navy is, in 2022, Navy is trying to add independent air propulsion systems to these Scorpion classes. What does it do is, if you take submarine, okay, it has a battery, it has a diesel electric engine. What happens is, currently with the existing system, existing propulsion system, for every 1 day or every 1.5 days, it has to come to the shore, closer to the shore, and take oxygen from it. Why? Because in internal combustion system, for exothermic reactions, you need fuel plus oxygen. So now with the current technology, it for every 24 hours or 36 hours, it comes close to the shore. Now with the help of air independent propulsion system, what happens is, it can buy more time. It can go up to 3 days without coming to the shore. Okay, these are marine propulsion systems which are added to the existing Scorpion class submarines. Okay. Moving forward, there is another concept called equalization levy that has been in the news. Before I explain the concept, can you tell me which part of the economy does it fall under to? What does it mean? Yes, you're right, Murthy. It is part of the project. The question says, it's talking about the topic of our discussion, sometimes seen in news. So this is the format of the question for previous year's question also. If you see some examples like 2 states or 2 nation theory is sometimes in news related to what? Yes, Israel Palestine. Pranit says C. Equalization levy is sometimes in news is related to e-commerce. Now what is equalization levy? Let's keep things very, very simple. What is levy? Some sort of tax. What tax? Now it is a digital tax. Now why a digital tax? Because of the increasing digitalization, some companies which are not located in India and they are trying to earn huge revenues from India, the government decided saying we'll have an equalization levy so that the income earned by non-resident e-commerce firms can be taxed. Okay. Recently, a United States state representative visited India from the office of USTR and said that you are applying 2% equalization levy to us. In retaliation, from so many days, they were applying other levies. For example, we are sending gold, we are sending jewelry, we are sending woodworks or jewel, whatever. The articles which have been sent from India had been in retaliation taxed for the equalization levy. Now the USTR office said that we are no longer going to charge for your retaliation and we are going to oblige to the 2% equalization levy, because if you see Google, if you see Amazon, if you see Facebook, all of them, the headquarters are located in the United States of America and they are earning huge revenues from a country like India. So if you see the origin of equalization levy, it started from 2016 budget. Initially it was 6% and then it was reduced to 2%. On the world basis, there is something called two-pillar solution where India recently joined in 2021. India plus United Nations along with OECD countries to work on the mode of digital tax. Because already some countries from the European Union, say Spain, France, they started something called GAFA tax, which is Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon tax. Basing on that, India also started its own equalization levy back in 2016 itself, but over the years it has reduced it to 2%, and now United States Trade Representative Office said that we no longer are going to retaliate for a 2% tax. Alright, this has been in news. These kind of keywords are extremely important for the prelims. I am going to show you one of the prelims question which has a backing to this equalization levy once you finish this. And you will understand that what kind of questions can be formed basing on these subjects. If you look at the this is a 2018 question, I guess, previous year's question, 2017 or 18. Please go through. It is one of the very difficult questions in the examination. It is not as easy as you think. Just read. I'll tell you the approach to such kind of questions. Answers please, fast. Two only. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. Be quick. Some say C, Murthy says C, okay. Huh? D. Okay. Why D? If it is not B, if it is not C, it is D. Why D? Comedy says B. Tell me, why? See, with reference to India's decision to levy an equalization tax of 6% on online advertisement services offered by non-resident entities, which of the following statements are correct? By the time you read the question in the examination, you are already out of mind. What is he asking? Okay, it has got nothing to do with this. If you see, it is introduced as part of Income Tax Act. This is point number 1. Non-resident entities, that is what the question is also saying, non-resident entities that offer advertisement services, again the question says the same, in India can claim a tax credit in their home country under the double taxation avoidance agreements. Why will you claim, if the purpose is to claim a tax credit under double taxation avoidance agreement, then why do you think the government is charging equalization levy? Correct? If you want to claim your credit, if you see income tax credit or input tax credit of GST, if you want credit, then why will the government again charge? So the option 2 is wrong. We are charging to collect money, not for somebody else to claim credit in their home country. Option 1, it is introduced as part of the Finance Act. Why Finance Act? If you see Article 112, addition, abolition of any new taxes can be done through Finance Act. So in Parliament, the concept of equalization levy is introduced as per the Finance Act of 2016's budget. Okay, so income tax is tweaked to Finance Act, double taxation avoidance is a no claim. So the answer is D. It is one of the most difficult questions. It's not very easy, but when you read a concept in news, you need to have a clarity about a lot of things. Now he has connected equalization levy to double taxation avoidance agreement. This is another topic in economy, base erosion profit shifting. It's called why companies are not paying taxes and they're shifting their profits to other nations. If you see, highest foreign direct investment to India is from countries like Mauritius, countries like Singapore. Why? Because their taxes are low, because of DTAA, because of base erosion profit shifting. Okay, he's clubbed two concepts. So this is another concept, this is another concept. Article 112 చూడండి sir. 112. Okay, moving on, there's an article about the fertilizer sector in India and the need for reforms in fertilizer sector. It is an important topic for mains under agriculture, paper 3. Can you tell me why do we need fertilizers? Why do we need?
Nature of soil.
Okay, nature of soil in India. What is the nature of soil in India?
Nutrients are equally matched.
Okay, very good. See, we do not have a huge organic matter in Indian soils, so we need additional nutrients. Let's make it simple. To provide plant nutrients. Okay, concept wise I am touching agriculture and some basic sciences. Now what are these nutrients? Major nutrients, primary nutrients and minor nutrients. These are what? Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, etc. Okay? These kind of questions will directly come in the examination. Straight questions. Now, if you see the fertilizer sector, we finished what is the fertilizer? Now we are talking about fertilizer sector. As a sector, India is the second largest consumer of fertilizer, urea in particular, after China. Now what is urea? Okay. Is it also a fertilizer? Then why do we use more of urea in India? Because of its properties, because of its characteristics. Now what are the characteristics? See, Indian soils lack nitrogen. Most of the Indian soils lack basic primary nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, of which urea has more nitrogen content first. Second, it is highly soluble. Now what do you mean by highly soluble? You can mix with water. Sprinkle on plant foliage. You can also connect it to an irrigation source. Due to its characteristics of solubility. Now, what is neem coated urea? What does it do? Yes, Pranit, you are correct. All soils are not same in India. That is why your mix of proportion of nutrients will change. Why do we coat neem to urea? We learnt about fertilizers, we learnt about nutrients, we learnt about the most important fertilizer, which is urea, for which the government subsidizes heavily. Then what is the use of neem coated urea? What it does, it increases the efficiency, it kind of reduces the weed growth, and it releases the nutrients slowly. That is, the decomposition happens at a much slower pace when compared to direct application of urea. Neem coated urea releases slowly. Let's say direct application of urea takes 1 hour to dissolve the nutrients. Neem coated urea makes it 4 hours, so that more time and less nutrients can be applied. So for example, the life cycle of a crop is, let's say 6 months, and if you apply at least 3 or 4 times the fertilizers, and let's say if it rains or if there is sudden flooding, entire fertilizers will be lost at a particular time. So if you apply neem coated urea, if you apply once, you can wait for 6 hours, you can wait for 10 hours and then recoat it. So the gap between the usage of fertilizers for neem coated urea is high. At the same time, it reduces the cost, it increases the plant efficiency, and it reduces the growth of plant weeds. You don't have to use insecticides or herbicides if you use a better quality neem coated urea. Fertilizer, one more concept is after food, it is highly subsidized. Almost government spends 80,000 crores in every budget to subsidize fertilizers. If I give you a practical example, what? Yeah. 2001, the cost of urea, let's say, was about 4.5 rupees per kg. Can you tell me what is the cost of it now? Huh? Subsidized urea per bag, per kg. Bag is huge. Bag is around 350 rupees, correct? Per kg, you tell me. 5.5. After 20 years, urea has increased by 1 rupee per kg. But if you see petrol, it is increased by 100 times. So it is the highly subsidized commodity of the government, and the experts say that it is high time for us to reform fertilizer sector. Now you tell me, what are the reforms that are needed? First thing is reducing the usage. If you give something for free of less of cost, you know that it is overused, right? Average consumption of fertilizer in India is about 125 kgs per hectare. It has to be brought down. Second thing is what? Indigenous production. Almost 30% of fertilizers are imported into India. This is the second reform that we can suggest. Some more measures. People are online. Some more measures for reforms in fertilizer sector. Educating the farmers. Soil testing, excellent. Huh? Your soil health card will tell, because NPK ratio, if you see, you can apply NPK, you can apply DAP, you can apply SSP, diammonium phosphate. Basing on the soil, basing on the crop, the fertilizers differ. So your soil health card will give you an information about what amount of nutrients you might need into the soil. Sulfur, phosphate mix. Diammonium phosphate. Okay, moving to the next topic. Do you know where is Kra Canal or Kra Canal? I'll give you a hint. It is related to maps plus international relations. Okay. So if you see, for China, right now, it has to cross the South China Sea, enter Andaman and go to Sri Lanka, or go towards Middle East. Kra Canal, China in collaboration with Thailand government is trying to cut a part of the isthmus here so that it can save time, it can save energy, it can save fuel and cross to Arabian Sea. Alright? In examination, this is a keyword. If you can connect to Kra Canal to what is happening in Thailand, you're done. You'll get your answer. Moving forward, this is again on the same basis of the question that we have discussed. This is a previous year question of 2019, I guess, or 2018. Just check. Think properly. I'm again telling you it's a previous year's question. You got to put some brain into it. Huh? Free to tell me options. Think and tell me. You'll be very happy seeing such question in examination, I'm pretty sure. You'll be extremely happy how I got 2 marks karke. But when you see the options, you'll be like, oh no, there's a problem. If I show you the previous diagram, probably you can answer well. Quick, we don't have much time. A, Sumatra, okay. B. Okay, B. Come on. Why not Sri Lanka? Why nobody is thinking Sri Lanka? Huh. Nothing is in India. It says geographically closest to Great Nicobar. Don't tell me Indonesia, tell me the option. I know it is Indonesia. Okay, how do you answer such questions? Don't jump into conclusion, just calm down. Sri Lanka, you know the country. Java and Sumatra are in where? Something is fishy here. Correct? Borneo is above Indonesia, slightly far. Now we have come to either Indonesia or Sri Lanka. If you see, now tell me. Is it closest to Sri Lanka or Sumatra? Sumatra. We never notice. If you see the tip, that's the answer. So be careful, evaluate all the options and go forward. Had fun? I'm moving to the next concept, which is a very important concept. I'm winding it up fast. We have 2 more topics to cover. Can you tell me, is abortion legal in India? Yes or no? It's a social issue. Think properly and tell me, is abortion legal in India or not?
Within time limit of 24 weeks.
Yes, within a certain time limit is allowed. So recently in 2021, there's an amendment to medical termination of pregnancy. If you compare it to the Catholics, India first had a Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act in 1971. Even now, some countries of the world do not officially legalize the abortions. We are, in terms of policy making, in terms of ideology, we are much ahead than the rest of the world. If you see some of the amendments, I'll tell you briefly what you need for prelims. Earlier it was 20 weeks, now it is extended up to 24 weeks. Earlier you need RMPs, registered medical practitioner. If it is for 20 weeks, you need a signature from 2 RMPs. Right now it is extended. And after 24 weeks, from 24 weeks to 40 weeks, there will be a medical board formed under the direction of the district magistrate, and from there approvals will be taken. Unmarried women are also covered. So 3 more important points. First thing, unmarried women are covered. Extension of time limit, and up to after 24 weeks to 40 weeks there will be a medical board form. Alright, 3 points. And we have a legal backing of Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. I'm moving forward. This is another important case study. You might have heard of Savita. She is an Indian origin, a dentist living in Ireland, and she died due to miscarriage. Why? Because the medical professionals, the doctors rejected the option of abortion. And what happened? There was a movement, there was a huge movement all across the world. Now, after 8th Constitutional Amendment of Ireland, it is now legalized. If you see, there are some countries who have provisions. Not all countries have liberalized on this aspect. Okay? It's an important case study that you can use in your society, social justice answers. Moving on to the last topic of National Family Health Survey 5, the results have come out. And before we proceed on to what exactly the NFHS says, I'm going to give you a brief of what NFHS is. So if you say 5, does that mean it is fifth time? So it started with 92, 93, 98, 99, second survey, 2005, 2006 is third, 2015 and 16 is fourth, 2019 and 20 is fifth. Alright? NFHS stands for National Family Health Survey. Okay, it is released by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Okay. Who is it conducted by? It's conducted by International Institution for Population Sciences, Mumbai. And totally it calculates on 131 indicators. The difference between NFHS 4 and 5, there are some more indicators which are added, such as what? Preschool education, disability, access to toilet facility, death registration and reasons for abortion. If you see, this is an important topic of current affair. Okay? We got the background of NFHS. It's the fifth time it is happening. Released by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, conducted by International Institute of Population Science, Mumbai. And there are some more indicators which are added. For any document, for climate change or for freedom of press index, you need to know who is releasing, what is India's position and what are its indicators. Basic concepts, can you tell me what? We are going to touch base on few basic concepts like total fertility rate, IMR, under 5 mortality rate and sex ratio. Okay, what is total fertility rate, TFR, can you define? TFR. Okay. In National Family Health Survey NFHS 4, this is a comparison of data from 4 and 5. So now it is fallen down to 2. Can you tell me what is the sex ratio of the population? What does it mean? What is the definition of sex ratio? Females per number of males. Is there no number? Females per 1000 males. NFHS 5 says it is 1020. What does that mean? Correct. More females than men. What is IMR? Infant mortality rate? Deaths. What is the formula? What is the definition? Huh? Under 5. Then what is under 5 mortality rate? What is IMR? Male, female, okay. Below 2 years. Some says below 2 years. Number of deaths per 1000 live births within the age of 1. We have neonatals, then infant mortality, then we have got under 5 mortality. Okay. Now it is reduced from 40.7 to 35.2. Our targets is around 33, 34. So neonatal, infant mortality rate, under 5 mortality rate. Yes, you can go through the statistics, but for overall you need to understand for answer writing what is the stance, because UPSC does not ask for which state it is high and which state it is low. For mains answer writing you need to show the difference, that's it. India stands here, we improved within 5 years and we are planning to improve in the coming days, that's it. Last one is under 5 mortality rate. Why IMR is more? IMR is how much? 35.2. Why is under 5 mortality rate 42? Here comes the concept of nutrition. Here comes the concept of immunization. Here comes the concept of early childhood care. What scheme do we have for immunization? Immunization. Mission Indradhanush. Can you tell me some of the vaccines which are given under Mission Indradhanush? Okay. Under 5 is up to 5 years. Data for 1 year is also calculated. So, infant mortality rate is less than 1 year. So, within 365 days, you have X number of people. From 365 days, within 5 years, X plus Y. So, this is 42, this is 37. So, we were able to improve these factors. We were able to improve the nutrition factors, immunization factors, but less than 1 year, we are still trying to improve that. That's what it indicates. Polio, TB, diphtheria, tetanus, measles, rubella, then Japanese encephalitis in some areas, you give hepatitis B. So there are 12 vaccines, 9 are given in all the areas, 3 exceptional areas. I mean, for example, Japanese encephalitis, it is only in few parts of the country, it is given there. Polio is given all over India, TB is given all over India, hepatitis B is given all over India. Are we clear? We will wind up the class. Any more doubts on what we discussed? I'll quickly go back. Any more doubts?
Can we write this data in answer?
Yes, yes, you should write these data in the answers.
Census is authentic or
Whichever data you remember. This is also an authentic data released by the ministry. Census is, it will take a lot of time. Census 2021 to complete and give the data will take a lot of time. You can write it as sustainable development goals. You can write it welfare, India schemes. Any more doubts? We'll call it a day. Okay.
Welcome to Vishnu IAS Academy. We are excited to announce the launch of our new courses. Contact us for registrations and counseling. Hard work never fails. Keep learning.